When a crime is committed, the perpetrator inevitably leaves behind something, a description, DNA, or physical evidence. This is the criminal's print on the scene. Welcome to the Criminal Prints Podcast, Episode 11.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Criminal Prints Podcast. This is Zach.
And this is your co-host, Jaron.
Thank you for joining us today. We're glad to have you. Today, we're going to be talking about the disappearance of Kyron Horman. Kyron Horman was born September 9th, 2002, and his parents were Kyron Horman, his father, and Desiree Young, his mother.
Kyron was born in Portland, Oregon. As you know, that's a pretty large city. And his father worked as an engineer for Intel, or Intel Corp. They, of course, make computer processors and other parts for computers. Very large company. In fact, they are number 46 on the Fortune 500 list. They revenue over $70 billion a year, in fact.
That is a huge number.
At the time of Kyron's disappearance, he was 7 years old. He was not a very large kid. He was 3 foot tall and 8 inches and weighed about 50 pounds. He has brown hair and blue eyes.
Also, at the time of his disappearance, he was wearing a black CSI t-shirt, and we will get into this much more later, but we actually do have a specific picture of him before he disappeared wearing this t-shirt. He also had on black cargo pants, white socks, and well-worn black Skechers that had orange trim.
Everything started for this case on June 4th, 2010. It was a Friday, and Kyron was really excited because that day his school was having a science fair that he was going to be part of. He attended the Skyline Elementary School in Northwest Portland, and we mentioned that he was going to do a science fair. For his project, he had a display and some information on the red-eyed tree frog. He worked really hard on the display and had pictures and just some information of the tree frog, and he was really proud of it. And Zach mentioned there was a picture of him in the CSI t-shirt. It also has the display in it, so that's kind of cool.
So now we're going to talk about Terry Moulton, and we're unfortunately going to have to talk about her quite a bit, but as we go on throughout this episode, you'll understand why. Terry was a substitute teacher originally from Roseburg, Oregon, and in the spring of 2002, Kane met Terry at a restaurant when he was out with some of his friends, and they started dating.
Desiree, Kyron's mom, said that broke up their marriage. Kane, of course, denies this and said that even though they were still living together, they were already living separate lives in different rooms. And
I would deny that too. That would also be my answer.
Yeah, as would I, or else you look like a creep, right?
Yes.
So Kane and Terry became romantically involved while Kane and Desiree were divorcing. And again, that brings us to the, was it an affair? Was it not an affair? I don't know. Right now, I guess it really doesn't matter. But it was kind of weird circumstances. And in August 2002, when Desiree was 8 months pregnant, she filed for a divorce. So pretty late in a pregnancy to be filing for a divorce. Things must not have been good at all.
So Kyron was born on September 9th, 2002. And they actually shared custody until 2004. In 2004, Desiree was diagnosed with kidney failure, and Kane then took over full custody of Kyron. Keep in mind here that he was already with Kyron's soon-to-be stepmom, Terry.
Yeah, and so Desiree didn't give up custody because she didn't care for him or anything like that. She was just really ill and wasn't able to care for him on her time. So that's how Kane ended up with full custody. And despite not having custody of Kyron, she remained a very active and big part of his life and his upbringing. So they were still very close, and she did everything she could to still be a good mother. Kane and Terry were married in 2007, and in December of 2008, Terry gave birth to Kiara, their daughter. Kyron now had a stepsister as part of the equation.
So Kyron would always take the bus to school, but on July 4th, 2010, which is a very bad day, Terry said that she would take Kyron to school because she didn't believe that his red-eye tree frog science project would fit in her car, which was a cherry red Ford Mustang. So what she did is she asked her husband Kane if she could borrow his Ford F-250 white truck because she didn't think it would fit in her car.
And I gotta say, and you look at the signs, it's just a poster board. It's weird that she wouldn't think it would fit in the Mustang. I'm not sure why you'd have to take a truck for a poster board.
And I think that this is one of many red flags to come. But they arrived at his school, at Skyline Elementary School, at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Kyron was scheduled to be in both a science fair, and that was in the morning, and then later in the day, a talent show. So the science fair went from 8 to 10 a.m., and the talent show went from 1 to 2:45 p.m. Unfortunately, his father, Kane, they knew wouldn't be able to attend because of work, so they made plans to go out to get ice cream together as a family instead afterwards. When Terry and Kyron arrived at school, Kyron went to his classroom and dropped off his coat and backpack.
So Kyron's teacher, Christina Porter, actually saw Kyron in her classroom with Terry that morning. So this has been confirmed. They have a witness to this. So the school typically opened at 8:35 in the morning, and the bell rings at 8:45. But because of the science fair, the school opened early this day at 8 o'clock. Now keep in mind that there were a lot of people that wanted to see the science fair and check things out. So this morning there were a lot of extra students and a lot of extra parents in the school.
So it would have been busy. There was a lot going on. At 8:15 a.m., Gina Zimmerman, who is the PTA president, saw Kyron with his stepmom in front of his exhibit. And Terry took a picture of him standing again in front of his exhibit and showing it off. So we know at that point that he was there in the school with his exhibit wearing his CSI t-shirt. And at 8:45, of course, the bell rings, and Terry claims that Kyron said, "I'm going back to the classroom."
And this picture of him standing in front of his display, we will post on Facebook and Twitter so everybody can see it for themselves. So then, according to Terry, she waved to him and then she left. She said that when she left the school, she saw Kyron walking down the hall towards his first class, which actually happened to be math class. So then the kids got back to the classroom at 8:45, and then they split up. They were divided into small groups, and each group had an adult chaperone with them. And at 10 o'clock, classes, this is when they actually began.
Yeah, because, again, they went and they checked out the exhibits and the science stuff, and then they came back to class. So at that point, the first thing you do when you start class is to take roll, take attendance. And when they did that, Kyron wasn't there, so he was marked absent. But they didn't think anything of it for reasons we'll talk about in a minute. So Terry left the school and drove to Fred Meyer's, which was only 7 miles away, to buy medicine for her young daughter because she believed that she had an earache. Unfortunately, the Fred Meyer's didn't have the medicine she wanted or needed, but she did buy something. She had a receipt from the store, so there's proof that she was there at 9:12 a.m. She then drove to a different Fred Meyer and bought the right medicine. They have video surveillance at both Fred Meyer's showing her as being there, so there's no doubt at all that she went to these Fred Meyer's, right?
That's correct. And now this is where it gets extremely interesting, because at this point she said that she gave Kiara her medicine at 10:10, and essentially, Jaron, I'm sure you would agree, for the next hour and a half, she said that she drove Kiara around on the country roads trying to get her to sleep.
Seems like a long time drive around trying to get a kid to sleep.
I can tell you when my child was that age, it certainly did not take an hour and a half to drive her around to get her to sleep.
And obviously all kids are different, but an hour and a half, that's a lot of driving. I don't know. It's another red flag.
So then at 11:39 a.m., we know that Terry entered a gym, which was actually a 24-hour fitness, and she worked out for the next 40 minutes. So she's there for 40 minutes, and luckily for her, the gym actually had a daycare inside of it.
So they took possession of her 1-year-old, and she went and worked out. So she left the gym at around 12:20, and her and her daughter arrived home at around 12:40. So the talent show was supposed to start pretty soon here, right? At about 1 o'clock it was. So at 1:21, Terry uploads the pictures to her Facebook that she took of Kyron that morning at the science fair onto social media.
And this was something she did quite frequently. She was very good at social media, and she posted a lot of pictures with her kids.
So Kane got home from work at about 2. And at 3:30, him and Terry and their daughter all walked to the bus stop. And this is something they did often to pick up Kyron. And so when they got there, the bus came and the bus left, and he wasn't on the bus.
And remember, they were going to go out for ice cream together as a family because he wasn't able to be there for his school activity. So everybody's together waiting for him to go get ice cream, and as Jaron said, he's not there.
And they asked the bus driver, hey, where's our son? The bus driver said that he wasn't on the bus. I don't know. He's not here.
So then the bus driver actually called the school secretary to ask her. And when he called the secretary to ask about Kyron, she said that he was marked absent at 10 a.m. when classes began that day.
So now obviously you got panic going off because you're learning your kid wasn't at school at all.
And not only was he not there, he's been gone for a significant gap at this point that's unaccounted for.
Yeah, hours and hours and hours, yes.
So typically, as I'm sure everybody knows, if your child is marked absent, especially in elementary school, there's a policy that the parents get called immediately, and they inform them that, hey, your child is not at school that day.
Yeah, and that was a policy at the Skyline Elementary School as well. So why did it not happen in this case?
So this is where there was some confusion over a doctor's appointment. So according to Terry, she had told Kyron's teacher that she was going to go look at other projects with Kyron around the school. Terry claims that the teacher misunderstood these comments and that she was taking Kyron, her daughter Kiera, to doctor's appointments.
So in other words, they thought that he was going to a doctor's appointment when the reality is he wasn't. But they didn't call because they thought, okay, the mom took him.
And there had been talk about doctor's appointments.
She had said about Kyron that the last 2 weeks he was really acting weird. He was staring into space. He can't remember anything. He'll walk into a room and then back out. He'll stop and stare and then move on. And the doctor thinks he's having mini seizures. So I made an appointment on Thursday for next Friday, which was the 11th, to have him checked out. And multiple sources from the school told the media and the police that Terry had informed the school that he had a doctor's appointment that day and not on the 11th.
This is extremely intriguing because this is a week difference. And ironically, he goes missing on the 4th, and there's a discussion about the date.
Yeah, it's just interesting because it seems that the school was convinced that he was not supposed to be there that day. He had a doctor's appointment. And the only person saying otherwise is Terry. So now we'll talk a little bit about the search.
So Kane and Terry, once they found out that he wasn't on the bus and they talked to the bus driver, for obvious reasons, as Jaron had mentioned, they went in straight up panic mode, which any parent would do. And They immediately rushed to the school, and at 3:45 p.m., Kyron was reported missing. So everything happened very quickly at this point. At 4:33 p.m., Portland police officers arrived at Skyline Elementary School. At the same time, a separate batch of police officers arrived at the Horman house and began searching. So at 5:30 p.m., a rapid broadcast message from Portland Public Schools was put out to families in their school district, alerting them with a text message saying, quote, Kyron Horman did not arrive at home today.
So this obviously would be in case he went home with another kid or just whatever it may be, in case it sparked somebody's suspicion, if a teacher knew, if anybody knew at all, which is a great system to have in place.
Possibly somebody would have seen him.
Right. And then at 10:40, officers reported that every inch of the school had been searched, including all crawl spaces, storage areas, classrooms, and outbuildings. So we're pretty late into the night, but the school has been completely checked off the list, and he is not there.
The Horman home was also searched extremely extensively, and there was no sign, unfortunately, of Kyron anywhere. So between 7 and 7:45 p.m., Sheriff Don Stanton personally called the FBI and alerted them of Kyron's disappearance. And this search involved 65 detectives, 60 trained searchers, and even volunteers as they came out and did a very extensive, very thorough search of the school and a 2-mile radius around the school.
So they got on it really quick. To have 65 detectives and 60 trained searchers there just that quick is really impressive. But unfortunately, again, they came up with nothing at that point. At 9:45 p.m., Mountain Wave, an emergency communications and search and rescue group based in Gresham, Oregon, arrived to help the search. And during the initial search, law enforcement also searched Sauvie Island. It's approximately 6 miles from the school. This includes a search of the Sauvie Island Bridge.
So on June 5th, this is where a tip line is created. And at noon, they held a press conference saying that at this time, Kyron is still a missing person case and not necessarily a criminal investigation. Also, at 4 and 8 p.m., 2 news conferences are held announcing that the National Guard and the FBI have helped join the search.
At 10:23 p.m., a Facebook page is created for supporters of Kyron and his family. And so this is all still on June 5th. So things are happening really quickly. And again, they haven't even announced it as a criminal investigation yet.
So on June 6th at 8:58 in the morning, Terry Horman announces that she's ordered 1,000 missing person flyers of Kyron and thanks everybody for their help in the search. Also, the FBI announces that they have brought in a profiler to create a profile of Kyron. And at 9:48 a.m. on June 6th, 300 students and their parents returned to Skyline Elementary School to be interviewed by detectives.
And again, this is 2 days later. It was on a Friday, so this is on a Sunday. They get 300 students and their parents there. And, that is really intense searching.
And they had 50 detectives at the school, and they actually interviewed until 4 p.m.
So they put a full day's work in interviewing these people. And also, on the 6th, at 9 o'clock p.m., the county sheriff escalates Kyron's disappearance to a missing endangered case, but they still aren't calling it a criminal case. It's still not considered kidnapping at this point.
So they're thinking possibly he got lost. We don't know exactly what happened, but we know we can't find him.
And he's been gone long enough that there's danger just inherently being gone this long.
So on June 8th, in the early morning hours, search crews resume, and they're looking and checking locations identified by phone tips and investigation leads. On June 13th, the sheriff announced at a news briefing that the search for Kyron has ended and the case has officially been shifted to a criminal investigation.
So again, at some point, you just have to acknowledge, okay, something somewhere was criminal or else he would have been home by now. So the first search lasted over 10 days. It had over 1,300 people from Oregon, Northern California, and Washington looking for him. So that's just a massive effort to find this young kid. And they checked a 2-mile radius around the school and parts of the island like we talked about, which again is about 6 miles from the school. And they announced they're looking into any video footage on traffic and roads and anything near the school.
So on June 14th, divers are sent to Sauve Island, where they were seen wading in waist-high water. And on June 18th, the sheriff's office released a flyer asking parents and kids about June 4th. So, Jaron, I'm sure you would agree, at this point they're trying to get as much information as they possibly can. And this flyer they released had pictures of Kyron, Terry, and a picture of a pickup that was similar to Kane's, to the one that Terry was driving that day.
So this is our first hint that they're starting to kind of think, that maybe Terry somehow could be involved. On June 28th, Larry Moulton, Terry's father, told People's Magazine that she had been subjected to repeated interviews and they were up to 6 hours apiece. So police obviously at this time were actually looking into Terry harder than it appeared, and there was some suspicion there. And the truck that she was driving that day had already been inspected by police not once, but twice.
So the truck's been inspected twice, and you've got up to 6-hour interviews. Oh boy.
Yeah, they're looking hard at her. And it appears that the father, Kane, wasn't subject of the same level of scrutiny. They honed in on Terry.
So it came out that Terry's cell phone had pinged off a cell tower that services Sauve Island. And they checked the surveillance video that shows the Sauve Island bridge and all vehicles entering and leaving the island. But unfortunately, the truck was not captured on any of this video surveillance.
On October 2nd, 3rd, and then again on the 9th and 10th, search teams returned to the island and continued to look for signs of him. So there was something that they just could not ignore that was driving them to that island over and over and over. They had approximately 180 searchers return to the island, in fact.
This is a very unfortunate situation, but it's really cool how you can see the community getting together and all doing their very best to try to find this young man.
Yeah, they were just pouring resources into it. And, police, they take missing kids very, very seriously. And, a lot of them can relate to a missing kid, and a lot of them have children. So that's something that they really go for full force. On January 30th, 2011, authorities resumed the search for him, but now they've changed the search area to the forested hills, which is west of the island.
And they said that they had, quote, new and very specific reasons to change the search area. So this time they had 50 searchers. They had 7 cadaver dogs, which is not a good sign, that were brought in. And this search focused on several parcels of private property, mostly logging land along Northwest Skyline Boulevard. But unfortunately, which is very frustrating, nothing was found.
On March 26th through 27th, searchers returned to a stretch of the Northwest Skyline on a gravel road further north in the Dixie Mountain area. This area they couldn't cover fully until January, but on June 2nd, 2011, Sheriff Don Staton said the formal Kyron task force will disband on July 1st, 2011, but a lead detective from the office will continue to investigate the case full-time. And of course, they're going to have the help of the FBI, the State Department, and the county prosecutor. But it's not a cold case at this point, but clearly they just don't think the resources are going anywhere, the investment, so they're minimizing it down to the one detective.
And the leads that they're going on to, unfortunately, aren't given any results. So this will be part 1 of the Kyron Horman disappearance. We will continue this next week.
But before we leave you, we're going to go ahead and give you tips and information. If you have any information that can help lead to his whereabouts, call the tip line at 503-261-2847. You can also call the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office at 503-988-0560.
You can also message the Missing Kyron Horman Facebook page. So also keep in mind, you can always call 911 with any tips and information you have and get it out that way. So that is episode 11, the disappearance of Kyron Horman, and there will be much more next week. We will have many more details to come. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope everybody has a fantastic day.
And remember, keep your record clean and your prints off the scene.